Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video may be a little bit controversial just because what we're doing is we're talking about supplements and the fact that you don't really know what's in your supplements unless it's been tested by a third party. The reason this has been brought to attention lately is because there are some sports that are trying to get into the Olympics. For example, powerlifting and the USAPL and IPF are trying to get into the Olympics. So they've started to institute WADA testing, WADA being the World Anti-Doping Agency. And they're the ones who perform a lot of the drug tests for different organizations like the Olympics and then other sorts of high-level sports. And the reason this is important is because people are getting popped at like the national and international level for ingredients that are banned by WADA, but they're not taking anything. These are things that are being cross-contaminated into like their supplements, for example. And people are seeing like they'll test a batch and it'll have something in it that's banned and then the next batch won't. So whether it's an ingredient that's in there accidentally, the point is people are getting popped for ingredients that are banned by different types of doping agencies just by taking pre-workout and competing at high-level competitions. And this always begs the question of what is in our supplements? Because the FDA doesn't really regulate supplements. While the FDA is the overseeing body, a lot of the impetus to actually test the product falls on the group itself. The manufacturer itself. And yes, when there are things that pop up like the, if you've been in fitness for a few years, you know about the Jack 3D drama where some people it was implicated in the death of some people and the FDA and different organizations stepped in to investigate that. Yes, in those situations, absolutely the FDA is going to do a little bit more digging, but for the most part, the burden of testing products falls on the manufacturer itself. So just because you're buying something from bodybuilding.com or Amazon or GNC does not mean that it's been tested, that it's been thoroughly vetted by an organization. It just means that it is a supplement that you can buy. So this becomes really important because, if we're testing people and they're testing positive for banned substances, what about the substances that we don't necessarily test for? People who have different allergies or whatever. The fact is we're not 100% sure what is in a lot of these ingredients. So a good place to go is if you're like, I really hope that I'm buying a product that's, been tested by a third party, because there are third party groups that test for, test the substances and make sure that what's in them is actually in them. I'll include some links over here and then also in the description box. But without that third party testing, there's a good chance that we're ingesting products that we don't actually know what's in them. And when we're taking our health into our own hands, especially people who like to say, I like plant-based, I try and do as much natural products as possible. Well, if no one's third-party testing your ingredients, who's to say that you're actually abiding by that? The other thing is, we're talking about other substances like energy drinks as well, because a lot of people use energy drinks. They're a little bit more regulated than the supplement industry, but the impetus still kind of falls on the brand to do a lot of the third-party testing. Obviously, the really popular brands like Monster and Rockstar are going to have a lot of third-party testing, but some of the not as popular ones probably won't. So if I were someone who is sponsored, for example, by a supplement company, the first thing that I would do is check to see if their stuff has been verified by a third party. There's 3 third-party organizations, and again, I'll link them, that do a lot of this testing. But I would want to know that the company has at least taken the steps to prove that what they say is in the product is actually in the product, and that's all that's in the product. Because as someone who competes as an athlete, the last thing that I would want to do is to test positive for something out of ignorance. If you're trying to be in a federation that's drug tested as an athlete that uses drugs, it's your own damn fault if you get popped. But if you're a natural athlete that's competing in natural competitions and you just didn't know because you weren't aware that something like that could happen, I don't think that's fair. The other thing is if you're someone who is pushing supplement, so say you're sponsored by a supplement company, I do think that ethically you should look into see, does this company abide by these regulations? Do they reach out to third-party vendors or organizations to make sure that what they say is in their product actually is in their product? Because you know, if you're following, you've got a bunch of people who follow you, and some of them are competing in the sport you're competing in, and then they get popped for these substances, but they're like, well, so-and-so takes this substance and they told me. I know that if I were a sponsored athlete, I would feel horrible about that. I also really wouldn't want to be part of a company that, you know, wasn't so stringent. I understand accidents do happen, but that's why we have these third-party testing. So this was short, this was quick, but this was mostly just to drive home the point that you probably don't really know what's in a lot of your supplements, and you need to go the extra mile to make sure that the ingredients that are in your supplements are really what's in your supplements. And if you want a good example, recently there's been some powerlifters who've been popped for Mr. Hyde and C4 having banned substances. And those are not small, obscure brands. Those are popular brands that a lot of people use. As always, if you have any questions, just leave them in the box below, and we'll chat a little bit.